Okay, so perfect. Thank you everybody for tuning in to our harvest special of English wine and cheese pairing. I'm Lydia Harrison. We've also got Patrick McGuigan tonight doing the usual cheese explanations, Helen Chesshire from Bolney Estate to talk about their Pinot Noir, and Mario Olianas to talk about the Yorkshire Pecorino. So hopefully you should be able to see all our videos down the side as well as the slides, and they will come on at the appropriate times to talk about their products. Let me just ping to the next slide and just do a little bit of a brief introduction about who we are. So I'm Lydia Harrison, MW, a Master of Wine, and I work at the WSET School in London. It's the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, and we do all different level qualifications on wine, spirits and sake, with actually beer to come in next year, so that's very exciting. And yes, we do everything from level 1 courses, which are sort of beginner entry level, up to the level 4 diploma, which is like a degree in wine over 2 years. And I teach, I'm an educator at that school, but I also organise the evening events, which obviously this year have been largely online, virtual. So we've been mastering Zoom and doing various webinars. And you can see some of the previous ones. So I've done some other cheese ones with Patrick on terroir and all sorts of different things on our website under the student information tab, webinar recordings. So if you want to watch back anything, you can see it there, and this recording will go up live there as well afterwards. So if you missed anything or you have to nip off halfway through, you can catch up. And we've, yes, you can also do our qualifications online, and they've been really popular during lockdown. With our level 1 and level 2, you can now complete online. So you can even do the exam in the comfort of your own home with remote invigilation. So that's been a success story of this year. Patrick, did you want to talk about yourself and the Academy of Cheese?
I'm Patrick McGuigan. I'm a cheese writer. I'm a food writer. I write about cheese for The Telegraph and Financial Times and Delicious magazine, and it's a great privilege, really. It allows me to sort of travel the world and the UK visiting cheesemakers and cheesemongers and talking to them. And so over the years, I've also sort of moved into teaching cheese, and we have it's the cheese equivalent of the WSET in a way, so it's the Academy of Cheese, but much younger organisation. It was set up 3 years ago by the industry, so a cheesemaker called Mary Quick, who makes a lovely cheddar down in Devon, plus Paxton and Whitfield, the cheesemonger, and lots of other people in the cheese industry have set this up to improve knowledge and interest in cheese generally. So we launched level 1 3 years ago, and we've launched level 2 last year, and eventually we will get to level 4, which will be Master of Cheese. So I'm catching up with you, Lydia. I will be Master of Cheese one day when that qualification exists. So level 1 is well, I've been teaching that since pretty much the beginning, and it's like a 1-day course, and it's open to everyone really, whether you're a sommelier or a chef, you work in a cheese shop, or you're just a member of the public and you love cheese. And obviously with COVID, classroom teaching is difficult, so we've gone online quite a lot as well. So I've been teaching the Academy level 1 course throughout the summer, and we sort of split it into sort of 2-hour webinars. And so that's good. And then level 2, I think, is going to come online fairly soon, I think next month actually. And we're working on level 3 as a qualification at the minute. So hopefully that will be ready next year at some point.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've obviously, as we've said before, a sort of a natural fit, the WSET and the Academy of Cheese. So we've done lots of wine and cheese events. And for this one, we wanted to put the focus on English cheese and English wine, because sort of a natural pairing, and both I think are seeing real growth and increasing quality and reputation. So that's what we wanted to do to kind of coincide with the harvest period. I think they've probably just about finished now. But yes, I thought I'd start with just doing a brief intro into sort of English wine, and then Patrick's going to do a brief intro about English cheese, and then we've got 3 pairings to go through. So one of the key things about English wine is we are a cool climate. Most of your viticultural countries and regions fall between 30 and 50 degrees latitude in the north and southern hemisphere, and we're a little bit above the 50-degree latitude, but because of the Gulf Stream, it makes us a little bit warmer than we are over here in the UK. And that cool climate's actually really good. It means you preserve the acidity levels in the grape, because that can fall if you have warmer temperatures. And it also gives you a long time to ripen the grapes, hence why you tend to only pick in late September, early October. So you have this slow, steady ripening and build up of flavours in the grape, which is beneficial for the flavour concentration. So that's the kind of overall style of English grapes, is they don't tend to be too high in alcohol because you don't get too much sugar, but really nice and acidic, and often with really good flavour concentration. But it is a relatively young industry. Obviously there's sort of some serious vineyards sort of more in the late 1900s, but particularly the last sort of 10 years, the last even 5 years, there's been a huge increase in vineyard planting. So you can see they're 83% up since 2015. So it's showing the popularity of English, and there is Welsh, UK wine, but we're focusing on English today. And the reason for that is the vast majority of vineyards are in the south, because that's where obviously it is slightly warmer. So the vast majority is like the southeast, and we're going to all the wines today are from either Kent or Sussex, but you also do get some down in the southwest and also up in East Anglia. And it's just because those sites generally are warmer. So especially if you've got a nice south-facing slope, something that's kind of moderated near the coast or a river, is going to help you ripen your grapes in this quite cool conditions. Again, because of that climate, the focus really is on sparkling wine production. So it's like almost 70% is sparkling, and we've got a lovely Gusborne to start with. But equally, there's been a lot of growth in still white wines, rosés, red wine production as well. So we wanted to show the range tonight. So we've also got a still white and a red wine to taste. The grapes, the most widely planted grapes, therefore, obviously, are focused around sparkling wine production. So it's your traditional champagne grape varieties of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Meunier, or Pinot Meunier, and we will be tasting those this evening. But we're also tasting a Pinot Gris, so part of the Pinot family. There's also some other white grapes like Bacchus and things that you can commonly come across as well. And I just wanted to point out the WSTA have on their website under locations now have a map where you can see English or vineyards across the UK, and even distilleries that are open as well. So you can, if you're interested, if you're doing a staycation, which I imagine we all are this year, you can check out if there's any vineyards or distilleries near you, and if they're open to visit, which I thought was a useful resource. And then WineGB as well as the sort of promotional arm for the wines of Great Britain, and there's some really interesting information on their website. So just a couple of links there for you to check out if you're interested. Patrick, do you want to summarize?
Lydia, as always, I've got some questions.
Okay.
How far north? What's the most northerly vineyard?
Oh God.
Helen knows.
I know there are vines, but whether obviously
in the UK, Sheffield, there are vineyards in Sheffield, and I believe there are some in Scotland. But the most northerly vineyard in the world is in Norway.
There you go.
Thank you for saving me there.
It's interesting. I'm actually, so we've done a lot of these, Lydia and I, cheese and wine. And Lydia's incredibly competitive and always wants the wine to taste better than the cheese. And I get a bit competitive about the cheeses. But I have to say today, I'm sort of equally excited. I think I'm just generally, as someone who loves wine, really quite excited by what I see going on in English wine. I'm no expert, but it just seems there's more and more styles, and just the branding is getting so much sort of slicker and smoother. The industry really feels like it's on the up, which is kind of what's happening with British cheese as well. So I think there are some really interesting parallels between not just English cheese, British cheese in general. We're focusing on English because we wanted to look at English wine, but British cheese in general has had this massive renaissance in the past, I suppose, 30 years. So if you look at sort of the Specialist Cheesemakers Association, which set up about 30 years ago, then numbers of members of that organisation have more than doubled. They've nearly tripled, actually. So British cheese was in a bit of a bad way 30 years ago, with a lot of industrialised block cheese being made, and that's to do with things like the Second World War and rationing and the rise of supermarkets and that sort of stuff. But sort of since the 90s, it's really kicked off. So we have over 200 producers now, and at least 700 different cheese styles made in, or cheese brands, if you like, made in the UK. And part of the reason for that is that we have good grass in Britain. You know, it rains a lot, and cows like to eat grass. So, you know, we have the right terroir. If we're using wine terms, we have the right terroir for cheese making in this country. Cow's milk is obviously still the most widely used, but actually we've seen a big increase in people using goat's milk and sheep's milk, even buffalo milk. There are now herds of buffalo in the UK. So we've got on the board tonight, we've got one cow's milk cheese, but we've also got a goat and we've got a sheep to sort of demonstrate that. And the technical ability and the skills of the cheesemakers in this country are really good now. And there's been a kind of relearning of traditional practices. That's, you can see that the World Cheese Awards, which is where thousands and thousands of cheeses from all over the world are judged, the British cheeses have won 3 times in the past 10 years. And that's a Cornish cheese called Cornish Kern. There was a blue called Bath Blue and a Cornish Blue as well. So it's not just me bigging it up. Actually, on the international stage, British cheeses are being recognised. A bit, I think English wine is as well, isn't it, Lydia?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awards, isn't it?
I probably didn't emphasise it as much, but yeah, I mean, that's why there's been an explosion in plantings, because, you know, they've proven that they can make, you know, just as good wines here as elsewhere. The quality has definitely, you know, really increased, because like with anything, the more experience that you have with it, and you know, people are really now understanding the winemaking techniques and the sites and what to do to create the best wines. And so that's why there's been a real explosion, and people have converted things like pig farms or any other land into vineyards. And I think it's just going to increase and keep going from strength to strength, hopefully.
Do we have good terroir in this country? Because I live in Brighton, and Sussex is all chalk around me, which is good, isn't it? For if you're growing.
Yeah. So the issue we really have is wet, you know, rainy conditions, which are problematic for grapes with fungal diseases and things like that. But obviously, with slightly warmer temperatures, that's generally a good thing. And then yes, the best sites often have quite sort of chalky soil. Like there's a lot of vineyards that have the same soil that you get in Champagne, which is why sparkling wine is quite predominant, but also sand and clay. You know, grapes will grow in lots of different soils. So the key thing is kind of the temperatures, avoiding frost pockets, because that's the key risk here. So that's why like a slopes or somewhere near the coast where you're kind of moderated is kind of key. So should we go on and let's start with our first wine? I put the wines first.
I've already started, Lydia, I have to be honest.
I put the wines before the cheese this week, Patrick. I thought I'd just, you know, set the scene.
Well, you know, be my guest after you, ladies first.
So yeah, obviously we had to show a sparkling thing, as that is the bulk of production here, and this is Gusbon Blanc de Blanc 2015 is what we are tasting, and they are based in Kent. So I put some maps just if anyone's tuning in that's not over that familiar with UK geography, which to be honest mine can be a bit sketchy. So you're sort of further east, southeast, not all that far from Ashford and towards sort of Folkestone, so quite near the coast. That's a nice warming influence on the vineyard here, and again they've got a really good south facing slope, so that's just really crucial for kind of maximizing the exposure and the sunlight, the warmth the grapes get, which they need to give them the best chance of ripening in this cool climate that we have here in the UK. It's called Gusbon because it used to be the estate was owned by the Gusbon family, so like that's why you see, if you can have a look on the bottle here, you see the little goose emblem on the neck, so that's where the Gusbon name originated from, which I thought that was quite interesting. And they're quite large compared to the next producer that's very small, so they've got 60 hectares of vineyards in Kent and another 30 in West Sussex, and as you said about award winning, so They're the only producer to have won the IWSC, so the English Wine Producer of the Year, 3 times. So really sort of well awarded for their wines. And what they focus on is vintage production. So we're tasting the 2015, so it's just grapes just picked in that year. And Blanc de Blanc means it's a white wine just from white grapes. So this is 100% Chardonnay. And they feel that that kind of then, therefore, instead of blending the vintages, which is quite common in sparkling wine, where they're labelled as non-vintage, they just have each wine just from one particular year. So it really reflects, you know, the conditions of that particular year and the harvest, and will have its own kind of identity and character. And the reason I chose this one, Patrick said, which one did you want to try? And I said, oh, the Blanc de Blanc, is because it has a really long time aging on the lees. So with sparkling wine, you ferment it into alcohol, you then have a second fermentation where you capture the CO2 to make it sparkling. But the defining impact on the style of the wine is then how long it spends aging on the lees. And this wine has had 42 months aging in the bottle on the yeast cells. And they basically break down and impart lots of bready, toasty, biscuit kind of flavour characteristics to the wine. And so I thought that would be really interesting, because it gives the wine a little bit more character, a little bit more substance and texture. And I thought that would work well with the cheese. And then the Chardonnay is obviously, as we said, you'd expect from wines from this climate, really acidic. It gives some really kind of fresh citrus notes. So it should be a really nice aperitif, but also work really well with the cheese, because the high acidity kind of cuts through any creaminess as well. And just to talk a little bit about the harvest this year, because we are doing a harvest special, they have also agreed with Helen that, you know, the 2020 vintage is looking really good. We had pretty good, really good spring and summer. So when the vines are, the buds are bursting and the grapes are forming. And then, yeah, I think we've had a sort of slow, steady ripening, and they've completed the harvest of the fruits, all looking really, really healthy. So hopefully, Gusborne, you know, 2020 going forward will also be top quality. So have you had a taste of your Blanc de Blanc, Patrick?
Yeah, it's absolutely delicious. I'm really into that wine. I can definitely get that it's a bit richer, isn't it? Is that the lees, or is that the Chardonnay, or is that both kind of?
The more the lees aging tends to give the texture to it. So yeah, Chardonnay itself is very kind of, in a cool climate, you'll get really kind of tangy citrus notes, green apple, and really high acidity. And that's why I wanted to pick one with the kind of the most aging, because it kind of really, it gives some texture which offsets the acidity. There's also a little bit of sugar in the wine. It's got kind of 8 grams residual, and again, that helps to bring out the flavors and just balance the freshness, the acidity. And yeah, it just gives it sort of creamy palate, these nice toasty bready characters. I think it's, yeah.
Lydia, I'm getting lemon curd on brioche. Is that about right? Is it?
Sounds perfect.
But it's definitely got that sort of bready bit, but sort of sweet bread, and then something citrusy like apple. You said apples. I think that's quite. When you said that, I thought, yeah, apples. It definitely gets.
Yeah, people often say like apple pie, because, you know, you've got the apple fruit character from the Chardonnay, and then the kind of pastry notes from the Elise.
I'm interested about this thing about sort of good vintages. So when was it that we had that massive heat wave? Was that 2018? Or was that, yeah? So was that a good year, or was that almost too hot? Was that like a really good?
No, vines can take it quite a lot of, you know, temperatures up to kind of 40 degrees is fine, or mid 30s. And we, you know, we don't tend to get really, really high temperatures here, but we just had a really good summer that year, like consistently dry and sunny and warm. And it still gets cool in the evening, which is good, because that just gives the vines a break, slows down the ripening. So that's kind of nice. If it's really hot at night, that can be, you know.
With English wine and cheese, it feels like there's a point where actually the vines might like it that hot, but actually the cows don't like it that hot. So that year, 2018, was a really difficult year for Britain's cheesemakers, because the grass, I don't know if you remember, the grass was just brown. It was just brown in the fields. And they really struggled with yields on the animals. You know, like the animals just weren't getting enough food, essentially. So their milk levels dropped. And they had to buy in lots of hay, because normally you let your grass grow and you cut it and you make hay or you make silage, and that will feed your animals later on in the autumn and winter. but they just didn't have enough forage for the animals. It was a difficult year. So it feels like there's a sort of a sweet spot where wine can do well and maybe cheesemakers can do well, which is probably, you know, you want a nice summer but not absolutely scorching.
Well,
I was going to say goats. I mean, the goat's cheese that we've got to try with this, actually goats are pretty tough animals, and so are sheep actually. So they can, you know, I mean, certainly you go to places like Sardinia and Corsica, and it's sheep and goats that do well there, because it's sort of quite tough terrain. If you think of Manchego, La Mancha, which is, they get very arid and they have very hot summers. So those animals do better in in sort of more extreme climates. So I do wonder whether actually going forward, British cheese, we might see even more sheep and goat's milk cheeses. It'd be interesting to see. So what we've got with this is, you can see the picture on the right. This is Brightwell Ash, and it's from a very small artisan cheese farmhouse cheesemaker called Norton and Yarrow in Oxfordshire. And it's Fraser Norton on the left and Rachel Yarrow on the right. And they set up, they've been going, they're relatively new, about sort of 4 or 5 years maybe. They've got a nice backstory in that they were, he was like a manager in sort of project management, and she was a teacher, and they just decided to give it all up and become and start rearing goats and make cheese, because they read about it in a magazine when they were on holiday. And I just think it was a brilliant moment. They just decided to do something different with their lives. And so it's all raw milk, this cheese. They've got their own animals, so they know that the milk is super clean. Animal welfare is really high. So no problems, you know, they've got super clean milk. And the breed of goat is quite important. You can see this chap with the long ears, this female goat with the long ears in the middle. It's an Anglo-Nubian breed, and they're known as a sort of Jersey. Like you've got Jersey cows that give very rich milk, well, so do Anglo-Nubians. They're sort of the Jerseys of the goat world. So they have very high fat content, good protein levels in the milk, and so give you a really rich, quite dense texture on this cheese. And you can see mine's actually kind of warmed up quite a lot. I'm not going to pick mine up because it's going to fall apart on me. But you can see better in the picture underneath the rind. I can hold up a little piece. I don't know if you can see. It's almost so white you can't really see. You can see better in the picture. Underneath the rind, it's starting to go very gooey. And that's the molds and the yeasts that grow on the rind sort of break down the cheese and sort of give you, I mean, this is a cheese I would definitely eat the rind, because you get really interesting flavors just underneath it. I always think their cheeses are really sort of clean and fresh, and just sort of, they have a zing, they have acidity, they have citrus notes, certainly in the core, where it's quite sort of lactic and tangy. But then underneath the rind, you get this lovely sort of herbaceous notes, I think, quite sort of green, grassy. I was thinking artichoke earlier as well, slightly vegetal kind of. So it's not just sort of zingy and creamy, you know, there's other more complex stuff, and also quite a savory finish, I thought. What do you think with the wine, Lydia? How do you think it works?
I really enjoy it. I always think, you know, you've got a few different things going on. You've got the real acidity of the wine that just kind of cuts through and cleanses the palate after the kind of creaminess of the cheese. Like you said, the citric notes, so they're both are quite tangy and fresh. But yeah, you've also got the kind of savoury bready notes of the lees aging on the wine, also going with that slightly the savouriness of the cheese. So
I honestly, that's a knockout match. I mean, I think bubbles with these kind of goat's cheeses, there's a lot of these goat's cheeses made in the Loire Valley, you know, like Puligny and Saint-Maur de Touraine, and you know, there's the hotbed of goat's cheese making there. And when I was there on holiday a few years ago, we drank a lot of Vouvray with it, sparkling Vouvray, and it was just, I lived off that for about 2 weeks. And I just think there's something about the bubbles with these cheeses that just is really nice, and it almost changes the texture of the wine, I thought. Like,
I think it's
made the wine more kind of, I don't know, sort of, it changed the bubbles in my mouth a little bit when I was drinking it with the cheese. I might be going too far there.
But I think it's as a pairing that's always overlooked. And when we've done this before and we've had sparkling wine and cheese, you know, often people just think of sparkling wine as having by itself, but it can work so well with different foods. You know, Gusbon promotes it a lot with oysters and seafood, but I think these sort of, you know, softer, creamier cheese as well is just a really nice pairing, and a good palate cleanser as well if you've had other rich foods.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't match a red wine with this kind of cheese. Although interestingly, I was on the cheesemaker's website, and they like drinking red wine with their cheeses, so that's fine. What do I know? I mean, if they like red wine with their cheeses, that's fine. But for me, I always find white wines with these creamy goat's cheeses work better. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, drink what you like is my motto. If you think it tastes good, then go for it. You know.
Exactly. No, I think that's a great start. And I'm going to move on, so we've got plenty of time for Mario and Helen. So the next one that me and Patrick are showing is Stopham Pinot Gris. So they're located a little bit further west. You can see it's up there on the map, kind of northwest of Brighton, in the South Downs National Park in West Sussex. So Kent and West Sussex are kind of two of the big key areas for English wine production. And this is my photo, so it looks a little bit different because this is the vines in winter. I visited back in February 2017, and it was pretty cold, but they were very kind to let me, as part of my MW studies, they let me and a couple of other students, my friends, loose on their vineyards. So this is the stage of the year that's called pruning, where you have to go and you sort of trim back the vines. You can see the little branches there, and you cut it back, and you then grows again the following in the spring. So they were very kind for us to visit, and I was equally very impressed with the wines. It's only a small vineyard. They have 6 hectares that they planted back in 2007, and they had their first vintage in 2010. So they've been producing wine for a decade now. So kind of showing this more recent, you know, exploration of English wine. And I really like their Pinot Gris. They also do other great varieties, but I wanted to show this because I think Pinot Grigio is just the Italian name, which is very well known and very popular. But you also find Pinot Gris, the French version, in other parts of France, New Zealand, etc. And this is more akin to those styles, I think, again, because we have this cool climate. It ripens slowly, so it still retains the acidity and the freshness that you'd get in a sort of typical Italian Pinot Grigio, but it has slightly riper fruit character, so sort of peach and some floral notes and stone fruit. It's kind of ripe pear characteristics, and they basically do everything to preserve that. So when in the winery, once you pick the grapes, they'll have a little bit of a cold soak. So just when you squeeze the grapes, you leave the juice and the skins in contact to get a little bit of the flavour. They then ferment at cool temperatures because that will burn off less of the esters, so it kind of really keeps the lovely kind of fresh fruit character of the wine. They then there's no oak, it's all sort of stainless steel tanks that they don't add any flavors to the wine. And then it was bottled in September last year. So all kind of really made to have this lovely kind of fresh style. Again, they leave a little bit of sugar. So again, it's got about 8 grams. You don't really taste it. It doesn't taste sweet, but it just gives the wine a little bit of texture, which I think works really well with the cheese that's coming up. And again, it just balances that really high acidity that we have here in the UK. And this wine doesn't undergo any malolactic fermentation. That's a process that you can use to soften the acidity in wines, but they don't do that here. They want to keep that sort of real sort of linear acid backbone of the wine. And yeah, I really liked it. Have you tasted it, Patrick? I think it basically, yeah, is exactly what they say.
I can't believe there's that, you know, there's so much flavour in that wine, you know, and for an English wine, I don't expect I'm getting like lychees and I'm getting a bit of grapefruit and definitely, yeah, I mean, there's loads, like maybe the passion. I was getting more tropical notes from that, which I was not expecting from an English wine. That surprised me.
Exactly, and that's because you have this nice sort of slow ripening. Pinot Gris can kind of get that flavour profile anyway if you leave it to ripen a little bit more. And yeah, they actually won this wine, the Pinot Gris 2018, won the IEWA Still Wine Awards, which is the independent English wine awards, so kind of more of a kind of consumer focused awards, all sort of independent different judges. So they equally thought it was pretty good. And yeah, I agree with you. I think you don't always expect that kind of ripeness or balance sometimes, but it just shows the quality of English still wines that's really coming on in leaps and bounds, and beautifully balanced, I think, with the acid, sugar, and the fruit.
Yeah, no, it's a terrific wine. Do you know how much that retails for, Lydia? What's the kind of price on that?
I wrote down the price of the Gusborne. I think I'll check. You can talk about the cheese, and I'll check.
Well, I thought, you know, if we're going to have Pinot Grigio, we should probably get an Italian cheese, but that's quite difficult when, you know, we're doing English cheese. And then I remembered we have one of the great cheesemakers of Britain is from Sardinia. So we've got Yorkshire Pecorino, made by Mario Olianas in Leeds, not Italy. I could tell you about the cheese that we're trying, but I think it'd probably make more sense to ask Mario about it because we've got him here. Hello, Mario. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect, perfect. So we're tasting, Mario. I thought we'd go for the Fresco, your Pecorino Fresco, which is a. Do you want to tell us about the cheese first, and then a bit more about sort of who you are? But tell us about the cheese first.
So the Fresco basically, excuse me, is actually a traditional Pecorino, like we do in Sardinia. So Fresco means fresh. So it's that 30 is anything between 15 and 30 day mature, which on the Pecorino side in the UK is really hard to get. When we start making this cheese, I wanted a cheese like a Pecorino Fresco, but I could not find it. Everything was vacuum packed because it doesn't travel that well because it's fresh. So the mature is soft, creamy, and a big grapefruit tree. It's got the acidity because it's not mature, so the lactic acid hasn't transformed, you know, with the full flavor. So, and that's what is really easy to eat, and I love that cheese in Sardinia. And I was really hard to find it here.
But Mario, for people who don't, so Pecorino is always made with sheep's milk.
Yeah, Pecorino is pecora, is sheep's milk cheese. You cannot have a Pecorino made with cows or goats. Pecorino is a classic Sardinia Italian cheese, which translates pecora. Is a Pecorino you can have a soft, hard, medium, a blue, which we make. So yeah,
most of the Pecorino that you find in the UK is aged, isn't it? It's at least, you know, sort of 6, 8, 12 months. So I mean, when I tasted this cheese, I loved it straight away because you just don't find these young, fresh. You can really taste the richness of the sheep's milk with this. I think sheep's milk has a sweetness and a richness, and it becomes spicier as it gets older, doesn't it? But when it's young, you can really taste the milk, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. You taste the sweetness and the green flavor, like a grapefruit flavor, because it's still young, and it's got a sweet note. When the Pecorino, when we got a sheep's milk, really good. When you put it into the tank, you can smell the sweet, like a sweet corn flavor when it's really fresh. That's what the really good sheep's milk does. But when you make the cheese, when I found out I was making first time the cheeses, I had to change the recipe a little bit because it was completely different texture from the Sardinian one. So I had to work a little bit harder to find this what Yorkshire Pecorino is now. But yeah, the sheep's milk is absolutely fantastic in here.
And so, where are you getting your milk from? Are you getting it from is it from one farm or from various farms?
My milk is one farm only. At the moment, my farm is I lost the 100% because it is. So basically, I work only with one farm, which is Harrogate. Is the near.
So I was going to say the landscape of Harrogate is very different to the island of Sardinia. So did you notice a difference in the milk then? Is it? I mean, I suppose they're eating grass more in the UK compared to Sardinia.
Yeah, yes, massively. The milk is much softer in here. If you make sense, it's much sweeter. It's more. it's got more complex. In Sardinia, they're eating, you know, green, dry grass. Like, you know, when you mentioned it, 2018, where we have a really dry, you know, everything dry. That's where my cheese, it was exactly the same to our Sardinian Pecorino. So, funny enough, you know, you were talking about for me, my cheese, it was on the, in fact, that year I won in Yorkshire, the best soft cheese, semi-soft cheese, because it was on the sheep cheese. It needs that, I think, for coming from Sardinia, it needs that complex flavor, that dried. So the sheep, they would eat less, so the heel was less, but the fat content was higher, if it makes sense.
Yeah, so that was 2018 was like a Sardinian summer in the UK. So for sheep's milk makers, that's brilliant. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. The milk, it was less milk, but the heel was higher because the fat content was much higher.
Yeah, and you might be wondering what this picture of the house is on the top right hand side. People might be saying, why have I put a picture of a house up? Well, Mario is an urban cheesemaker. You make cheese in an extension to your house where you live, don't you, in Leeds? Is that right?
At the moment, I'm just doing the cover because I'm doing the. So we're redoing the kitchen, and next door is where is the dairy. So everything is shop, and it's a small extension, and we are fully proof from environmental, and I'm working from home.
So yeah, I took that picture from Google Maps earlier, Mario. I hope I haven't given away your address.
Because I just got 4 people in my screen. I don't know what I'm doing in the Zoom section.
And we need to know, Mario. So how does? Oh, are you still there, Mario? Come back.
Yeah, sorry.
We need to know how a Sardinian cheesemaker ends up in Leeds making Pecorino in his house. What's the story?
You tell me about it. I don't know if you know that. I came here for 6 months.
How long ago was that?
That was 2001. Actually, I did 19 years in the UK. My plan was coming. Just a second. Somebody's trying to call me. The Zoom thing, you know. I'm
famous.
So the story is, I came here 2001 for 6 months to learn English and go back to school. Go back to Italy, because I'm qualified barman, mixologist in the colony, and that was the plan. And that's it. You know, and now I'm a cheesemaker.
Well, it's brilliant. I mean, and you know, you mentioned you won an award in 2018, but I mean, Mario, he's far too modest to say, but this guy just wins award after award for his cheeses. And yeah, I mean,
I didn't want to say.
Yeah, you did. But no, I love it. What do you think, Lydia? What do you think of the cheese with the wine?
I think they're both delicious, and they really complement each other. One of the other things we always kind of look at, don't we, with pairing is the kind of flavor intensity. You don't want one, like the cheese or the wine, to overpower the other one, and they both have flavor. You know, the wine's got some nice kind of ripe fruit, and the cheese has got flavor, but neither are kind of really, really pungent. You know, they just sort of sit in harmony really well together, because the cheese has got some creaminess and sort of subtlety to it as well, like the wine. And I just think, and then with a little bit of texture on the sugar from the wine, that kind of goes with the texture of the cheese. Yeah, I think it's...
I don't know, Mario, what would you normally drink with a fresco cheese? What?
Sorry,
just go red, do you?
I'm all against the rule. I love my red. What I drink with this spread. I'm just at the moment. I mean, I nearly drank a bottle with a quarter of cheese.
Good
So I'm drinking this. It's something more fruity. It's got some acidity note to it, but it's something sweet, and it's got that little grapefruit, that tanning in down the back, and it just goes really well with the cheese. It's because it's quite high in, it breaks the wine quite nicely, and it just goes really well.
Yeah, I can see that actually.
I'm a red wine drinker.
But
We
Have to
can be
get you a bottle of the
versatile.
slop of
You
Pinot
can
Gris.
try different
No,
wines and different cheese.
Actually, sounds really amazing because it's that is it all the one the everything on the wine. It was a perfectly match of the Yorkshire Pecorino, which has got the grapefruit notes, the sweetness, and that's what we got on my cheese, and that will balance out exactly the wine and the cheese together.
Brilliant.
I can imagine eating together and will marry very well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mario. That's great. I mean, yeah, I love that. I think that's match of the day so far.
Yeah.
Although there's
That's
one
the
more
thing
to come, isn't there? Let's not make our decisions just yet.
Yeah, and sometimes you want the contrast, don't you? And sometimes you want the similarities, and I think that's a really kind of a really good similar pairing where the wine and the cheese have similar kind of textures and aromas.
One of the things, Lydia, that I look for if in a really good match is sometimes you get almost like a third flavour. Like you've got your cheese and you've got your wine and they've got their flavours, and when you bring them together, something else unexpected comes out of it. And I got that a little bit. I started to taste more savoury animally notes from the cheese with the wine, and so it brought something out of the cheese that I didn't taste before I had the wine, which I think is that's exciting.
Yeah, I thought it brought out some kind of slightly more citric and sort of slightly wet stone characters in the wine as well when you had it with the cheese. Should we call it the sixth sense?
I know the third flavour is how someone's described it to me. You've got one flavour, two flavour, bring them together and something else happens, which is sort of quite exciting. It doesn't happen that often actually in matches, I don't think, where something completely left field comes at you. But I'm
like
pleased
bringing us together, Patrick. Bringing the wine, the cheese. We got the third flavour. And I think we should move on to our third pairing.
Let's do that.
On that note, and
here's Mario.
Helen is going to take us away and to talk to you about the Bolney Estate Pinot Noir.
Oh, lovely. I've got it right here, and I don't know whether to open it up or not, but I can't see the So thank you. Yes, so Bolney Wine Estate is one of the oldest and largest commercial vineyards in the UK. They planted their first vines in 1972, so we'll be celebrating 50 years in a few years, which is very exciting. We're directly between Gatwick Airport and Brighton on the south of England, so in West Sussex, very close to Haywards Heath. We've got a very beautiful plot in total. We've got 42 hectares, 104 acres. And we plant a combination of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier, as well as Bacchus and a few other varieties as well. We're about 60% sparkling and 40% still. I think we're one of the larger still producers in this country. And we're really, really proud of our Pinot Noir, which is now, I believe, one of the largest planted grapes in the UK. I think it's about 32% of all the vines in the UK. I think about 800 hectares is Pinot Noir. Majority of that will be going into sparkling wine, but obviously a lot will be going into still wines. As I said, we're in West Sussex. We've got the South Downs. We're on a lovely ridge of green sand and a little bit of clay. So really amazing drainage for the vines. So they have to work really hard to get down into the soil and bring out those lovely nutrients. We use Burgundian clones. So the style of this Pinot Noir is very linear. A little bit like you said earlier with the Pinot Gris, it's a really sort of a lovely sort of tasting note, but it's got great acidity, beautiful fruit character. Again, this wine's won heaps and heaps of awards. We're really lucky. It's very light. Actually, I will pour a glass.
You can see in the classic kind of Pinot appearance, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are often quite surprised at how light it is, but yeah, so this is 2018. It was bottled in April of last year, so very fresh. It's got a bit of bottle age now. I think we're nearly sold out of the 2018. It was such an exceptional vintage, both in terms of quality of fruit, also the quantity of the yield, which was good. Our estate, which actually, incidentally, if anyone's interested, if anyone's able to come over to the UK or is in the UK, I think we saw there's a chap on here, I think from Haywards Heath, which is about 2 or 3 miles away from us. We are open to do tours and tastings, and that's sort of a huge part of our business is tourism, and we've really been affected this year by that. But if you do visit the estate, you'll see that our vines are trellised very high. And this is not only to avoid sort of, to capture sort of lovely drying breezes that we get in the UK, but also to avoid the deer that we get in the vineyard. We have roe deer roaming around the vineyard, and they can't jump up onto their back legs. I can't remember what it's called when you can have only 4 legs on the ground. But so the vines are at the height where they cannot reach up and eat the grapes off the vine, which is very sweet. Our Pinot is fermented in stainless steel vats, keeping the skins submerged with the juice as long as possible to get as much flavour and obviously colour from this. And it's just really important for us to get as much flavour out of the grapes as we can. So it's got a lovely sweetness. I don't know what you guys think about it. It's very light, tiny bit of tannin.
I was drinking this in a pub the other week, Helen, and enjoying it immensely. I think it's great. Would you make Pinot Noir you would make a red every year, would you? Or do you just do it in certain years? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some years, 2017 was a very difficult year for us. We had an air frost, which we lost about 75% of our fruit. So the harvest was much smaller. That was really unusual because that happened in April. Obviously, we are working with Mother Nature, but also sometimes she works against us. But yeah, I think pretty much we'll produce red wine every year. Growing our Pinot Noir for our sparkling wines as well is hugely important. But yeah, to have made a wine like this, of this quality, is actually, been amazing. I think the fruit for 2020 will be as good as this, we hope.
So is 2020 going to be a good vintage? I mean, so 2018 was a really good one. Should people be looking out for 2020?
We hope so. As Lydia said earlier, we've got to have something good come out of 2020.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this has had some time in oak, hasn't it? This Pinot Noir.
Yeah, tiny bit of oak. We don't do much oak aging. We are experimenting with a few more little parcels, possibly of a couple of Chardonnays that we'll put in oak. So, but it's just it's not so much that it's overpowering. I think it's a very light. Yeah.
No, I think it's really nicely done. You've got all the kind of classic red fruit character of the Pinot Noir, the acidity, as you say, the soft tannins. So it's a great black grape variety that you can ripen in our climate and do really well. But the oak just gives a kind of subtlety, a bit of kind of smokiness. And I think you would talk about the cheese, Patrick, I think that kind of works really well with the slightly, I don't know if you call it smoky, but there's definitely a quite funky flavour to the Baronet, and I think it really kind of works with the slightly toasty oak.
So on the Academy cheese course, we do quite a lot on cheese and wine matching, and if you had to sort of pin me down and say what one wine would you choose in a restaurant to go with as many cheeses as possible, I would normally say a red Pinot Noir, particularly old world, as it were, sort of cooler climate, because it just has that acidity. And this, I think the Bolney wine has really got that lovely sort of fresh acidity. So that means it can work really nicely with, I might go back and try that with the goat's cheese, because I'd be quite interested to see if it works with the goat. But it also has that, a Pinot Noir can have that sort of smoky, sort of, sometimes a bit, I always think like frazzles, like smoked bacon kind of flavour. I'm not getting the bacony bit, but I'm definitely getting a bit of smoke with that. And so it's a really good match for some, you can match it with sort of hard aged cheeses, but also washed rind. And washed rind cheeses, which we've got here, is called Baronet. It's from Wiltshire, made by a brilliant cheesemaker called Juliana Sedley, who's there with her Jersey cows. She works on the Neston estate where they've got this herd of Jersey cows. Jersey cow's milk is very rich, very high in fat, very creamy, and very high in beta carotene as well, which is why the paste is so golden on this cheese. And what they do is they mature it, is they wash the rind. So this is the process, you've heard of Epoisse and Stinking Bishop. This is all part of the washed rind cheese family. And what you do is the cheese is aging, you sort of smear the rind with brine with some alcohol in, and you develop this kind of quite pungent bacteria and yeasts that grow on the outside, and they're quite funky. It's sort of can be quite farmyardy, quite meaty. You can get smoky flavors, and it's quite a hard cheese to match sometimes with wine. It's tannic reds don't really work with it. It sends everything a bit off. But Pinot Noir, because it has that smokiness and the acidity, kind of is a good go-to for washed rind cheeses. I think that works really, really nicely. It's a bit like, people know the French cheese Reblochon, which is from the Savoie. Baronet is kind of a British version of, it's a bit like a Reblochon, but it's made with Jersey milk, which is much richer in the UK. So it's nothing like a Reblochon really, but it sort of takes its inspiration from that, but then the influence of Britain changes it into something completely different. Juliana's originally from Hungary, but she worked a lot in the US and then has ended up in the UK. She's a really experienced, talented cheesemaker. And I think this is knockout, this cheese. What do you think, Lydia? Does it work?
Yeah, it's often we kind of do these pairings and we sometimes go, actually, that one doesn't work, or I prefer that wine with this cheese. But I think tonight all three have kind of been on point. And when I first tasted the cheese, I thought, oh, it's quite pungent. Especially the rind has a real kick to it.
Yeah.
And I think classically you'd think, oh, maybe English wines could be a bit overwhelmed with that. But then having it with the Pinot, it has got, it's got really good sort of fruit core, but also with, the nice kind of like toasty oak character. And imagine with a bit of time, it develops some of that kind of classic kind of vegetal Pinot notes that you can get. And it does stand up. The flavor intensity of both is, I think, really complementary. And as I said, the sort of subtle oak just sort of comes out a little bit more with the cheese.
Can I ask a question, Pat, about red wine with cheese? Because I often find that you can actually get a very sort of jarring of flavors together, and actually can be quite unpleasant sometimes to pair. I know that, say, this Pinot Noir is very light, but if you're, say, pairing with a sort of heavier red.
Yeah, because it's the tannins really. I think that's when you start to get more tannic reds. Certainly with creamier cheeses, the tannins and the cream just kind of sort of softer cheeses just clash, and the wine doesn't taste nice, the cheese doesn't taste nice, and you just everything goes down a level, and what you want is to take everything up a level. And so, but there are loads of cheeses that you can have with more full-bodied, sort of muscular wines, but things like sort of more aged hard cheeses work really well with those. So actually things like an aged Pecorino are really nice with red wine, or an aged Manchego, or even a vintage cheddar, those kind, or Conte, or Gruyere, those kind of things where they've got a bit of age and a bit of saltiness. Lydia and I did a tasting at the Bermondsey. This was a live. You remember those days, Lydia, when we used to see real people in class? And Lydia really blew my mind, where we had a Parmesan, a really aged Parmesan, and Lydia said, let's try it with some Amarone. And I thought that would be way too sort of powerful, but actually the salt seemed to kind of soften out the tannins, and that was a little trick that Lydia's taught me, which I've mercilessly copied and pretended I came up with that ever since, basically. But do you think, Lydia, is there something about tannins and salt that kind of they work together?
It can be quite personal, because it depends kind of on your palate, and some people find tannins in wine quite bitter, and with certain foods that can kind of accentuate the tannin, and some people find it really unpleasant. Other people will really love that, and they love that kind of clash of flavors and that kind of drying texture. So it's hard, you know, that's why we never say, oh, you have to have this cheese and this wine and you'll enjoy it, because some people might really enjoy it and other people might find it unpleasant. But salt is the key thing, because salt generally it brings out flavors in wines, it brings out the texture, will make it feel more full-bodied, and it will soften the acid and tannin of the wine. So that's really good if you do want to have like a kind of richer, more structured red with more tannin. And also oak flavors in wine, again, that can sometimes clash with certain elements of cheese. So yeah, I tend to prefer the really hard, like well-aged cheeses, because I think they temper better, you know, pair better with the sort of richer reds. But you know, it's all very personal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like, I mean, yeah, I think life's too short to set down rules about which wines and cheese you should eat together. I think if you like it, do it personally, because it's all personal, isn't it? And it's really, all of this is about enjoyment and pleasure, isn't it? Well, it is for me anyway.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's been a really good pair. All the matches have been really good, and I might go back a bit later and try some of the wines with different cheeses, because I'd like to try that Pinot with the goat's cheese. Yeah, and perhaps actually the Pinot Gris with the washed rind cheese, the Baronet, might be quite interesting as well. I just wanted to say about the cheeses. So Mario very kindly sent us his Pecorino Fresco as well. He popped in a few of his other brilliant cheeses, but the Brightwell Ash and Baronet were sent to us by La Fromagerie, who, if you're going to buy good cheese, buy it from an independent cheese shop. That would be my advice. If the supermarkets really struggle, particularly with these soft cheeses. And La Fromagerie, I work with them a lot and get their cheeses a lot, and they're just brilliant. They look after the cheeses so well. So anyway, that's a bit of a plug for them. But I mean, I think it's really good advice. If you want good cheese, go to a good cheese shop.
And so many of the English cheese producers have started doing deliveries and stuff, haven't they? You know, during lockdown, so you can order and get things delivered, or if you don't have an independent shop or like a La Fromagerie close by.
So Mario's just launched his website. So here's a plug for Mario. He's just single-handedly developed his own website with an online shop, so you can buy direct from the cheesemaker. And actually, during the whole coronavirus period, where a lot of cheesemakers, they lost a lot of trade because the restaurants closed, this being able to buy direct online through their websites has been a real godsend and has really sort of saved British cheese. So there's actually, on the Academy of Cheese website, there's a whole list of places that, you can look up certain cheesemakers and see if they deliver, as well as online cheesemongers and physical cheesemongers who have got an online shop as well. So yeah, thank you to Mario and to La Fromagerie for the fromage.
Yes, very much. Thank you to both of you for sending your cheese. And Mario, I'm very much looking forward to trying the Pecorino and the blue Pecorino that you sent as well. So thank you.
The blue Pecorino is got nice. It's not hard. It's not really strong like a Stilton, but it's nice, and it's halfway to a gorgonzola and a dolce latte. So if you think that spiciness, that is nice. I absolutely love the Leeds blue there. So
basically, I could listen to Mario say gorgonzola and dolce latte in his Italian accent pretty much all night. I mean, I'm sold now. I want that cheese.
I put it for the camera. I'm proper Yorkshire,
Well, when the camera goes off, you're all eat by gum.
Yeah. All right, love.
Brilliant. Well, I wanted to, obviously also thank La Fromagerie for the cheese and Mario for the Pecorino, and also thank you very much for Helen and Mario for joining us and telling us about the Bolney Estate Pinot Noir and your Yorkshire Pecorino, Mario. Thank you as ever to Patrick. I like to call him the cheese guru, for his cheese knowledge. And you've just recently, someone's mentioned in the chat, Patrick, you've just recently written a book, haven't you?
I did, you mean?
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
I just seem to, yeah, I have. I didn't want to go on about it, but I've just, my first book is called The Philosophy of Cheese. It's 8,000 years of cheese history in about 110 pages. Perfect little stocking filler for Christmas. Published by the British Library.
Oh, Mario!
Look at Mario. We're all plugging each other here, aren't we? So yeah, it's available in all good bookshops, and please buy it. I suppose that would be great.
Brilliant. And equally, thank you to Tracy from the Academy of Cheese, who's been answering some questions on the chat, which I must admit I haven't been able to keep up with this evening. But if you are interested in learning more about cheese, you can do the Academy of Cheese website, and there's lots of different virtual classes. I know Patrick's doing some this side of Christmas, and you can do your
my November course is just sold out actually, but lots of spaces in January, February, and March. So yeah, have a look on the Academy website.
Yeah, and then you've also got Patrick's details, my details, and the school as well. So if you want to learn more about wine or spirits or sake, you can see all our courses on our website. As I say, you do them online. The school is reopened. We're doing them in class as well. And you can also sign up for our newsletter, so you'll hear about any more virtual events we're doing, equally, hopefully sometime soon, some more physical events as well. And hopefully we can get back in the classroom and do some in person cheese and wine tasting, so you're actually all tasting the same thing at the same time. It's always more helpful. Brilliant. Well, any final concluding comments, Patrick?
No, I just wanted to say I miss you, Lydia, and I want to do this. I want to do this in a classroom.
I know.
It's always great.
Block of cheese.
It's a great pleasure for me to do this because I learned so much. It's an honor really to be able to just ask you loads of questions about wine. It's brilliant. No, great. I really enjoyed that, and I don't know who won, cheese or wine. I think it was a draw.
Oh, I think it is. I think it's we both crossed the finish line just at the same time.
Great. I mean, it's exciting. The podium. It just shows food and drink in this country is really, it's something to be proud of. Yeah.
I agree.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we could do another one. We've just kind of scratched the surface of English cheese and wine with this, and so many more cheeses and so many other great producers and different varieties as well. So have to do a part 2 next year, I think.
Okay, let's do it. Got this cheese and wine. That'll be fun.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much again, Patrick, Helen and Mario. Thank you for joining. Thanks all of you that joined in. As I said, the recording, if you missed any, if you had to dart off to put the kids to bed or you join late, you can catch up. The WST School London has a YouTube channel where all our webinars have been over lockdown, and you can also find them on our website via the student information and webinar recordings. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry if we didn't get to answer all of your questions. It's quite hard drinking and eating cheese and talking at the same time. But yeah, cheers everybody.
Cheers.
And, have a lovely evening, and thank you very much for joining.
Brilliant, lovely. Love to see you. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Helen.